to our questions that we will have for you. Can we begin by you telling us just briefly in a few minutes what happened to you? What were your cases about exactly?
So would you like me to go through the whole case?
Just an overview.
Yeah,
I know there's quite a lot of material to cover. Maybe in 3 or 4 minutes, if you
sure.
can try your best to just give us a summary of what's actually happened.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So for about 20 years, I've been praying outside abortion centres and offering help to women in crisis pregnancy situations. And dozens and dozens and dozens of those women have accepted help and been really grateful for it. I run a 40 Days for Life campaign in Birmingham, and that's part of an international campaign. Twice a year, we pray near the abortion centre and offer alternatives, both to those considering an abortion and also to people who've had abortions and are hurt by that. We direct them to where they can get some support and help. Last year in September, the council and the local police worked together to bring in a PSPO, a public space protection order, which created a buffer zone around the abortion centre, which we prayed outside of. So from then on, my 40 Days for Life campaigners have been praying outside the buffer zone, which is actually just outside a Catholic church down the road from the abortion centre and barely even in sight of it. But I decided to silently pray inside the buffer zone, looking at the wording of the PSPO, which talked about protest, which was forbidden there. I've never protested outside abortion centres. So I believed certainly my silent prayer would still be allowed as a very fundamental human right. So in December, I went inside the buffer zone to silently say some prayers. So I wasn't holding any posters, any leaflets. I wasn't manifesting my faith or my pro-life beliefs in any way. And I wasn't engaging with anyone at all and had no intention of engaging with anyone. And actually, when I went inside the buffer zone area in December, the abortion centre was closed at that time. The police came and they asked me why I was there. And I told them that physically I was doing nothing, but I might be praying in my head. And that they asked me to move. Well, they actually asked me to come down to the police station with them, and I said if I had a choice, then I had no desire to do that. And so I was arrested. At that point, I hadn't even said concretely that I was praying, only that I might be praying. I went to the police station. They searched me, took me in the police car to the police station. I was put in a police cell for some hours. I was questioned. Obviously, I asked to have a solicitor present, so I had the duty solicitor present while I was being questioned, and I was released on bail. And I was subsequently charged. And I received a letter after a while to say that because of the intervention of the Crown Prosecution Service, the case might not be going to court. But I wanted to have some conclusion to that case. I didn't want the case just dropped and me just left not knowing whether I was considered innocent or guilty. And obviously I had the right to ask that it be continued. So I said I would like it continued. And we went to court. And at the same time, as many people know, Father Sean Goff was in court alongside me for a similar alleged offence. And we were both fully acquitted within a matter of minutes. About 2 weeks later, I went to do essentially the same thing, silently praying without manifesting that in any way inside the buffer zone. This time, 6 police officers arrived with a police van, and again, I was arrested, taken to the police station in the police van, was in a cell for a shorter while. I wasn't questioned. And again, I was released. And after I was on bail for a while then as well, for 3 months actually I was on bail. After 6 months, I was told the case was being dropped. the police apologised that it had taken so long, and I was told no charges were being brought against me. I continued to pray on a weekly basis outside the abortion centre, in the same manner, silently, without manifesting that in any way. And after numerous weeks of me doing that, the police turned up one day and said to me that they were going to issue me with a fixed penalty notice if I didn't move. I said I saw no reason why I would need to move, and so they gave me a ticket, which they led me to believe was a fixed penalty notice. But I since received a letter through the post telling me that if I went again, I would receive a fixed penalty notice, i.e. that wasn't a fixed penalty notice. And just to say, I have been going to pray outside the abortion centre every week since then. So that's sort of the case up to date in a nutshell.
Right, thank you. Thank you for that summary. Could you also just confirm, so what is your current role and job title within the pro-life movement?
So I'm the co-director of March for Life UK. So that's my paid work, but on a voluntary basis. And kind of separate to that, obviously they're very heavily linked, I am the campaign director of 40 Days for Life in Birmingham.
And for how long have you been with both of those organisations?
So for 40 Days for Life in Birmingham, I founded the Birmingham branch about 12 years ago, something like that. March for Life UK has been running for about 10 years, but I've only been working as a paid for that role for about 2 years now.
Right. Okay. That's lovely. Thank you very much for that. So what we would like to do, we would like to ask you a number of questions, and you have already covered in your summary a few of the points that we already had planned, but we will go through this quite methodically. So forgive me if some of my questions might touch on some of the points you raised in your summary. And the way we're going to approach it is we're going to approach it in 3 chunks of inquiry, if you like. We're going to first deal with the first arrest that you experienced, and then the second arrest, and then the fixed penalty notice at the end. And there will be probably some miscellaneous questions as well that we have. So first of all, the first time you got arrested, which was in December 2022. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
And what was the name of the abortion clinic or the facility?
It's called the Robert Clinic.
Which?
It's called the Robert Clinic, as in Robert, as in the name Robert, and okay. It's actually a BPAS facility.
BPAS, okay. And had you ever previously stood outside that clinic prior to this arrest?
Yes. So obviously before the PSPO, I was standing regularly outside there as part of 40 Days for Life. And personally myself, I would go every week, whether it was 40 Days for Life or not. But when the PSPO came in, I had gone 3 times to pray. I think it was 3 times I'd gone to pray silently there, and I think it was on the 4th time that they arrested me.
And when this PSPO came in, I mean, do you know approximately when it came in, or precisely when it came in?
It would have been in September of last year.
Right. So just to confirm, you're saying that prior to the actual arrest, you had stood out there on, 3 occasions?
I believe it was 3 occasions.
And you prayed on all those occasions, or only on some?
Silently in my head, yes.
Right. But there was no approach from the police on those 3 occasions?
On one of the occasions, a female police officer did come and talk to me, but no arrest was made, no charges.
When you say she came and spoke to you, what was broadly the context of that discussion?
And just to say, without me going back over each of the incidents, there's been quite a few, so it's forgive if anything's not is slightly cloudy. I believe she asked me if what I was doing there, and asked if I could do that elsewhere, and I explained that I had no need to move elsewhere, and it was quite a short interaction.
Okay. So this occasion in December 2022, I understand from your case summary that you sent into the panel that a complaint or complaints were made about you prior to this first arrest. Do you know who made the complaint or complaints?
Well, I mean, the fact that the PSPO exists is because of complaints by locals in the neighbourhood. We know that there's a lot of people, well, not a lot, there's certainly quite a few very vociferous people in that neighbourhood who are ideologically opposed to what we do. And it's off the back of their complaints that the PSPO was brought in the first place. But I know when I did go to the police station, I was shown photographs of myself standing outside the abortion centre, which had been taken by locals, some of them who live almost opposite, who'd taken photographs from their house of me standing there. And I was read out complaints from them. You know, they were obviously the ones who contacted the police.
And as far as you are aware, were any of these complaints from members of staff within the abortion facility?
I wasn't told of that. And as I say, the abortion centre was even closed at my first arrest, so there were no people in the abortion facility.
Okay. So when you actually prayed on that occasion, we're talking in December 2022, can you, excuse me, can you give us a picture to help us understand where you stood exactly in relation to the entrance of the building?
Yeah, so the abortion centre has a small sort of enclosed courtyard garden, whatever you want to call it, around it that's got a hedge around that. So obviously that's their own property, and there's a gateway that goes into that sort of courtyard. I would have been standing, if you were facing the abortion centre, I was standing to the left of the gateway, probably a few metres away, maybe 4 metres away at a rough guess from the gateway to the abortion facility.
So it's on the same side of the building. It's not on the other side of the road or anything like that.
No, the same side as the abortion centre. And just to say, this is the place that we'd always stood when we were having our 40 Days for Life campaign. That was the place that we'd been standing for you know, quite a long time previously.
So about 4 meters approximately away from the gate.
That's very approximate, but yes, something like that.
Yes. And during the period of your act of prayer on this occasion, were you stationary or were you moving around?
So I would have been stationary. The only movement is it was quite cold being in December, and I might have sort of moved from foot to foot to keep my blood circulating. But other than that, yeah, I was stood stationary.
Right. And as far as you understand the rules of the PSPO, what's the actual buffer zone distance that's in operation in terms of where one is allowed to stand and so on, or where one is not allowed to stand?
The buffer zone doesn't actually give distance like the proposed new buffer zones are saying, which I believe are saying 150 metres. This more says certain, you know, roads. There's actually a map that you can look at online which shows you which roads and which parts of which roads are covered. So the road that the abortion centre in is called Station Road, and it's on the corner of a junction. So there's a few roads that go off there that are covered by the PSPO. Station Road is the one that I was actually praying in, which is where that entrance of the abortion centre is. And the zone continues down Station Road for, I would approximately say, about 120 feet or metres, actually, is that metres? I think that's 120 metres, I believe, about down that road, but very nearly to the end of that road, the buffer zone continues, or to the next junction. Right. It stops Robert, just before the Catholic Church starts.
Robert, can I just as a point of clarification? So basically, there's a new law which has now received royal assent, so it's in force. It's called the Public Order Act 2023. And there's a new section, which is called Section 9, the offence of interference with access to or provision of abortion services. Pretty easy to read section as these kind of laws go. And it sets out what a safe access zone is, which is a boundary 150 metres away from an abortion clinic. And it also sets out what the offences are in relation to interfering or obstructing or causing harassment in relation to the provision of services to that abortion clinic are. So that's subsection 1 of that
So at the moment, people can still pray near their abortion centre if there's not a PSPO, but I believe at some point, probably early next year, it will come into effect.
Can you tell me, you said that the abortion facility was closed at that time. Was it closed during that whole day, or had it closed a few hours previous to your appearing at the scene?
It was closed on that day that I was praying there.
Okay. Now, when the police officers arrived, how many officers arrived initially?
On the first time that I was arrested.
This is the first arrest we're still talking about, yes.
There was, I believe there was 2 police officers there.
And did any more arrive during the course of
I
that?
don't think so, no. Don't remember on that occasion.
And were they male, female, or?
I think it was 2 male officers that occasion. Oh no, there was 2 male officers, but then that was it. A female then came to do my search. So there must have been a woman who came.
So 3 ultimately arrived.
It must have been, yeah.
Yes. And so what did they say to you? What were the questions? What was the discussion about?
Very, very basic, really. They asked what I was doing there. I told them physically I'm just standing here. They said, but why here? I said it's an abortion centre. And they asked, are you praying? I said I might be silently praying in my head, but nothing out loud. And they asked, will you voluntarily accompany us to the police station? And I said, if I've got a choice, then no. And they then said that I was then being arrested. That was pretty much the extent of the conversation. Obviously, I was then searched, and that took a while.
Right. In your case summary, you actually say that the police charged you with, and I quote, protesting and engaging in an act that is intimidating to service users. Is that generally correct?
Yes, so that would have been when I received the actual charge, the official charge after the questioning, etc. That's what appeared on the sheet. That was the wording that would have appeared on the sheet.
I see. And approximately how long did the police officers question you on this occasion? On this first
at the police station?
Well, no, outside the clinic.
At the abortion centre. That wasn't very long. The search took quite a long time. It was a very prolonged search. So it was in essence just those questions that I've said to you pretty much.
Right. And did the subject of abortion in their questions come up more broadly about the rights of women or the rights of the child? Anything in that broader category of questioning? As
I say, that was essentially the questions at the abortion centre. It was that, you know, and there's been a video of it that's been shared. People sometimes think there must have been more. There must have been a longer discussion. There wasn't. It was quite brief. Right. But as I say, the search itself was what took a long time on that occasion.
And were you charged with actually one or more offences? So
there was two offences that I was charged with on that. So one would have been in engaging in an act of protest, and one was engaging in an act which was intimidating service users. I believe it was those 2 offences.
I think the other one which I have here on the screen is engaging in any act of approval or disapproval, or attempted act of approval or disapproval.
Yeah, that sounds.
Would that make sense? And it included verbal or written means, prayer or counselling. Would that make sense?
That is the wording of the PSPO.
Yes. So, having been arrested, the police took you to the local police station?
It wasn't actually the local police station. It was one further away. So they said that wasn't the facilities at the local police station, because there's one about 5 minutes away. So they took me to one which is about a half hour away. And just to add on that, at the very end, when I was released, it was dark. It was an area of Birmingham I'm not familiar with. I'm not from Birmingham. Obviously, my car was parked at the abortion centre, which was a considerable distance away. And they didn't offer to take me back to where they picked me up from. I explained to them that my car was parked there, and how was I to get back there? And they just said, and they also actually initially said I wasn't allowed inside the buffer zone because of my bail. I said, my car's parked inside the buffer zone. How can I get my car? And they said, well, if you make your way back to outside the buffer zone, then phone us. We will come and pick you up and take you to the car, which seemed a ridiculous idea from my perspective. And I said, so you want me to get all the way back there by myself, and then you'll come and pick me up and take me to the car, like that last half a minute. They said, actually, you're allowed in the buffer zone for today. Make your own way back there. So I had to make my own way back, which in the end meant calling a taxi to get back, and I had to pay the taxi the other end. So I did feel there was a slight lack of duty of care there.
Yes. How long were you at the police station for until you actually left?
It would have been quite a few hours, probably a rough guess at this stage without looking at copious amounts of notes, probably maybe 4 hours or something like that, but that's a very rough guess.
And
I was
of
in the
those
cell
approximate 4 hours, what period of that time did they question you for?
So most of the time I was in the police cell. Just initially going in, all the procedure as you're booked in takes quite a long time. Then I was in a cell for quite a while, certainly an hour or two in a cell, waiting for my solicitor. Then I had to have the brief with the solicitor, which took a while. The actual questioning, I wouldn't like to put a time on it because it's very hard to say, but not an enormous amount of time. But you know, there was certainly a fair few questions they were wanting to get, you know, much more in depth as to what I was praying about, and I had to identify myself in various photographs. And
can we just go into that, if you wouldn't mind, about what those questions were when you say what you were praying about? Can you just try to recollect for us, to the best of your memory, what those questions were exactly?
So they wanted to know more about the organisation that I was part of, as in March for Life. They were asking me about that. They were asking me, like I say, what I was thinking about, and I had to repeat back to them because I felt that was quite an intrusive question. And I said, you actually want to know what I was thinking about, what I was praying for? And they said yes. So I explained to them what I was praying about. They, as I say, they asked me to identify myself in various photographs. They asked me to identify Father Sean, who was being charged at a similar time. I had to identify him in photographs. And that was the main line of questioning. As I say, quite a few questions about what would people have thought on seeing me there. I remember them asking me something to that effect, which I felt it wasn't for me to second guess other people's thoughts. That's the main questions that I can remember being asked.
And was it just one officer at the station at that time questioning you, or did another one?
There was two police officers, a male and a female. That the male did most of the questions, but the female asked some of them.
Right. You said, if I've got the right wording here, you said that when they asked you about what was going on in your mind during your prayer, you said it was an intrusive question, and they asked you to identify yourself in the photographs. What feelings did you have during that experience of the intrusive question about what you were praying about? What did you feel?
Well, like I've suggested, I did feel it was almost slightly surreal, the whole experience, to be honest. And it wasn't until afterwards, when I processed it, that it sort of became more real. So all throughout that interview, I had this sort of slight feeling that this is just such a kind of almost farcical situation, that police wanting to know what I'm thinking about. But I guess also from the perspective of what I believe with my faith and my pro-life beliefs, I felt it was an opportunity to share with them something of the truth of the reality of the damage abortion does. I mean, for instance, you know, my prayers on that particular occasion were for those who've been hurt by abortion, and I was praying for women I know, and I explained to them situations I knew where women have been, friends of mine have been very much damaged by abortion. And so I was able to explain to them those situations and why I felt those people needed prayer, and those like them needed prayer. So I also felt it was an opportunity to share with them the reality of abortion and how it doesn't help women, and how many women can be negatively impacted by abortion.
During this time at the police station, did they offer you any tea, biscuits, anything like that?
Not that I remember, or certainly not biscuits. But I couldn't 100% sure if someone might have said, "Did you need a drink?" I wouldn't like to swear by that.
And I don't know if you commented on this earlier. Did they take your personal belongings, such as your mobile phone? Did they take anything that belonged to you?
So I had a very thorough search outside the abortion centre, and it was then that everything was taken off me. Everything out of my pockets, which would have been, my phone, my keys, my rosary beads, which were inside my pocket. Even my tissues were taken. So everything was taken from me then. Hair clip out of my hair. And when I got to the police station, I also had my religious chain from around my neck taken as well. And obviously when I go to the police cell, you have your shoes taken off you and your coat taken off you. So that would have all been taken from me at the police station, if not before. Obviously, the contents of my pockets would have been taken beforehand.
And all those items were returned to you at the time of your release on that day?
Yes, yes.
And any further, do you have anything to add about what you felt when they took all those things from you? I asked you about your feelings at the police station, but when they took your personal items, during the course of that.
The actual search, I was quite taken aback by. It was a very thorough search on the street. I was really questioning in my own mind: is this really necessary? Is this a normal procedure to be so heavily searched on a street, when even any allegations that I've ever been told weren't anything to do with me threatening or carrying anything that I shouldn't be carrying, or anything of that nature. So it seems strange that I would be having such a thorough body search on the street, and considering I never had that again, even when I was arrested, it did make me question in my own mind whether this was necessary, and that whether the police actually were entitled to do this as part of their procedure. I almost wondered whether it was part of the kind of humiliation process, to either put me off or put others off doing what I was doing. That was something that I did question. When I was at the police station and they took the religious medal that I had from around my neck, I did say, was there any way I would be allowed to keep that? Because it's something that I like to keep on me at all times. But I was told not, and I presume that is part of normal police procedure, that you're not allowed to keep anything like that once you're put in a police cell.
And when they returned everything to you, upon releasing you from the station, was everything in its original condition?
Yes.
I understand that the case in the court was heard at Birmingham Magistrates Court.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And you told us in your case summary that you were acquitted in February of 2023. Can we just go to that hearing itself? I mean, can you tell us, what do you remember of what happened at that hearing? What was actually said, just broadly? Can you give us a picture of that?
Incredibly brief, to be honest. The woman who was for the prosecution was asked if she wanted to bring anything. I wouldn't know the exact wording against me or say anything, and she just said nothing to everything that she was asked. And then the judge did ask why it had come to the court, considering, I suppose, that no evidence was being brought and no nothing else was being said. And again, she just said, I've got nothing to say, nothing. And the judge did say something like, I believe she, as in me, deserves to be told why it's got this far, or something to that effect. And she just said, I've got nothing else to say. So the judge then said, well, obviously that he found me not guilty and acquitted me.
So was the hearing very brief?
Very brief, yeah.
Was it a male or female judge?
It was a male, yeah.
So in terms of questioning you in the court, were you questioned very much about what happened?
No, not at all.
Not at all?
I wasn't asked to give an account of it. as I say, the prosecution didn't seem to be offering anything at all. I think at that stage they'd realised that it wasn't something that was going to go anywhere, and so they didn't want to proceed with it. So as I say, they offered nothing in response to any question that they were asked.
Right. So you were acquitted at that hearing, you say?
Very quickly, yeah.
Right. And I understand from the information you sent to us prior to the hearing today that you received an apology from the police following the hearing. Is that correct?
No.
The only
apology I received was after the second arrest, when I was told that the case was no longer being continued. The police said they were sorry it had taken so long.
Right. So was there any communication from the police following the first arrest of any kind?
No.
Before we proceed to the next set of events when you got arrested for the second time, before we proceed to that, do you want to add anything that we haven't covered, Izzy, about this first event?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the only other thing worth mentioning was the actual bail itself was quite concerning at the time. Initially, they told me that I wasn't allowed to communicate with Father Sean, who was being charged similarly, and that I wasn't allowed to go to the church down the road from the abortion centre. And I did explain that I sometimes go to Father, obviously Father Sean is a priest and I'm a Catholic. I said that I was quite concerned about the fact that I wasn't able to communicate with him. And after a while, they then communicated to me that I was allowed to talk to him, but obviously initially the bail even stopped me from talking to a priest, which I was quite concerned about.
And what period of time did that bail go on for when you...
The bail itself, I think, went on for nearly the maximum. I think it was just under 3 months. But the actual bail, that condition was dropped quite quickly.
And you're saying that you wasn't allowed to talk to Father Sean. So can you just clarify, what was your connection to Father Sean at the time?
So Father Sean was somebody who, he's a friend, he's a priest, and he participated in the 40 Days for Life campaign that I ran and helped with that. But it was obviously due to the fact that he was also being charged, he was being charged with having a bumper sticker on his car, which was pro-life. Well, they said it was pro-life. It said something like unborn lives matter, I believe it said. And he'd been inside the buffer zone as well. Silently praying, I think. So he was being charged for a similar alleged offence.
So in not being allowed to communicate with him, did that include all forms of communication, meeting, email, phone? Would that be the right way of understanding it?
Yeah, absolutely. Every means of communication. And
the church down the road from the abortion facility, you're saying you wasn't allowed to go to that either?
I was told that I wasn't allowed to, now I'm trying to think whether it was the first or the second bail. I was told I wasn't allowed to pray outside that church or participate in it, in the vigil outside that church. I think I was allowed into the church, but not directly outside it. And that might have been the second bail, actually. I think that was the second bail. They stopped me from doing that.
And had you previously been on vigils outside that church?
Well, that's the thing. All my volunteers would pray outside that church because that's outside the buffer zone. But
you were allowed contact with all those other individuals during the bail period?
Yes. Oh, yes. I was allowed to speak to my volunteers. Yes.
Right.
But I just wasn't allowed to physically go there and be with them.
Okay. Before we get to the next event, do any of the other questioners have any questions about this particular period for now?
Yes. Could you give me the exact date of your court hearing in February, please?
I think it was the 16th of February, but I would probably need to go back and double check on all the dates to be 100% sure. Off the top of my head. Yeah. Because I think I was originally told the 2nd, and then it was postponed. I think it was postponed to the 16th. But I can also verify that afterwards if you wanted to be 100% sure.
Isabel, I also have a question. It's
Sure.
more like an internal question as opposed to a kind of what's your sort of motivation? What are you trying to achieve by having this silent prayer within the if you like the 150 meters or the exclusion zone? Because again, this is maybe it would just be helpful just to have because just theoretically, let's say you're 1 meter outside the exclusion zone, yes, or within the Catholic Church, which is close by. That prayer is, I guess, from a theological point of view, and this is not my sort of main thing, equally effective. So it would just be, why do you want the physical proximity? And it's not, I'm not doing it in an aggressive way. It's not
no, and I'm glad you've asked in a way, because a lot of people maybe would ask this similar question, or at least think this similar question. And I do think it's important to maybe at least start off by saying, this is something I've been doing for 20 years. It's not something that I've just done because the buffer zone's been brought in. I've always believed in going and praying outside the abortion centre, and I've done it many times when the abortion centre is closed. Well, I mean, obviously, before the buffer zone, I would want to interact with women and be able to have that opportunity to offer them help and support. But even when the abortion centre was closed, prior to the buffer zone coming in, I would still go and pray outside there, because I believe that presence is important as part of our prayer. And I suppose I would liken it to something like, you know, if you sometimes see flowers at the side of the road, or even maybe halfway up a mountain, where somebody has died. We don't believe that person is there anymore, but that's how we kind of mark that place, but by something present there. For many Christians, and particularly for Catholics, presence is a very important thing. Like, we might go on a pilgrimage to somewhere where something has happened hundreds of years ago and is no longer happening, but that presence is very important from our perspective of our faith. We believe that beings that are in time and space, it helps us focus our thoughts and prayers, and we believe that it can be helpful in almost sanctifying an area, or being sanctified by an area, depending on whether the place we're going to is spiritually good or spiritually bad, if that makes sense.
But in that sense, what you're trying to, because I guess the view would be, therefore, that in a place where abortions have happened and continue to happen, that constitutes something of a spiritual sinkhole, and you're essentially trying to bring a divine presence there in order to alleviate that.
That could be one thing, but as I say, it also helps just to focus one's mind on the prayers that one is saying, and on the reason that one is who is praying for as well, by being there. So I think there's more than one reason for being physically present there. Obviously, as I say, prior to the buffer zone, it would also be to offer that help to women, which at the moment it isn't.
And you mentioned that you disclosed some of the stuff that you were actually mentally praying. What were the? I mean, you don't need to go through all of it, but more or less, what were you thinking?
When the police asked me, I said to them something like, I was praying for people like my friend Natalia, who became pregnant and had abortion pills at home and ended up seeing that child down the toilet, which thoroughly traumatized her. For people like my friend Amy, who was raped and felt pressured into having an abortion, for which she deeply regretted. For people like my friend Kirsty, who again ended up passing her child at home in her bed, and when she lifted the covers, she saw what she described as a scene from a horror movie. So it was for people like that I was praying on that particular occasion, and that's what I explained to the police.
So, you know, this in some ways, this is a dry sort of recitation of the facts. I think it's always good to get closer to the reality of it. So thank you very much for sharing those two.
No problem.
I have a
Any
few
other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I just Isabel, can I just ask you a couple of questions? Obviously, I want to go back to prior to the public space protection order. On a let's say the day with the maximum volunteers, how many would you have in front of the abortion clinic, would you say?
So generally I'd have people in twos outside the abortion centre. Occasionally there would be a group of three, and obviously that would mean as a couple was taking over from a couple, there could be both groups, both sets of people there as they took over from each other. But normally what would happen is if a couple were coming and there was already a couple there, if for some reason the couple who were praying there hadn't finished their prayers, the other couple would wait around the corner until they had. I would actually discourage people from being there in more than a group of three at the same time. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong per se in doing that, but we wanted to be as approachable as possible. And I would find that, having two or three there was made ourselves more approachable to women who didn't feel that they were having to stop, to connect with a whole crowd of people. And obviously, the blocking of a pavement, which could potentially come if you had a bigger group. So generally two, occasionally three, and obviously just at the changeover, you'd have two taking over from two.
Explore a couple of very silly questions. I mean, did you ever have a disturbance or some form of screaming or fisticuffs? Did you have distressing scenes, or if you did?
So one of the things I would say is that obviously the mood in that neighbourhood has meant that there's been quite a few locals who oppose us, and I'm going to come on to that.
I'm going to come on to that because I want to. I think there seems to be some opposition group by the locals, if I could put it that way.
Yes.
But in terms of the actual people visiting, the young ladies visiting the Roberts Clinic, were many of them? Well, were they receptive? Were they brush past you? Were they grateful?
I would say that the majority, if you were going to put people into groups, the most people, I mean, just to go back a little bit, we would have a leaflet that we would offer women going into the abortion centre. So we would start by just saying, is there any help we can offer you, or can I give you a leaflet? That would be our usual start-up line to anyone walking past. If they ignored us or said no or whatever, that would be the end of the conversation. Obviously, if they said yes or what is the help you can offer or something, a conversation would ensue. I would say probably the majority, the biggest group of people probably didn't stop to talk and would just either not take a leaflet or just go, I'm all right, or I'm fine, and just walk past. The next biggest group would be the ones who would just take a leaflet, whether they stopped for a conversation or not. But that was certainly a fairly common thing, that someone would at least take a leaflet, if not stop to have a proper conversation. It happened occasionally, sometimes, that you would get somebody who would shout something or say something that you would regard as unpleasant, but that would be the smallest amount of people, and the volunteers would be told, at that point to end the conversation. Obviously, if somebody shouts a swear word at you or something like that, then not to enter into an argument with somebody if they're in an emotional state like that.
And outside, I'm sort of pursuing the obvious. And outside these abortions, some young ladies would go, "Yes, thank you for the leaflet. I'd like to discuss options more." And presumably, you've got some success stories, if I could put it that way.
Absolutely. So over a period of but prior to this abortion centre, we were praying outside another one which closed down at the end of 2019. So that we'd had a longer period of time outside the other abortion centre. But I just remember over a period of a few years, counting the number of women who we know accepted the help. Sometimes we're not sure of the end result of our conversation, But just over a period of a few years, I know well over 100 women who changed their minds, who had originally booked in for an abortion. As I say, often we don't know the end story, because sometimes people are coming for an initial appointment, they take a leaflet and say, you know what, I'm going to go home and have another think about things now. Or you know, yes, I might talk to, you know, my boyfriend again, or I might access this or that. You know, maybe we've mentioned somewhere they could get help for a particular thing they've talked about. You know, they say, yes, I might look at doing that, and we don't know the end result of those conversations. But there was certainly plenty of women that we did, or plenty of couples that we did, and who were very, very grateful. And also some of the ones that would even decide to continue with their abortions. I remember, you know, a few occasions of women actually embracing me and saying, I just want to say thank you for being here today, even though they would continue into the abortion centre. Because I think some of them just felt it was nice to have a friendly face, somebody who genuinely cared about them on a day that was, you know, quite often quite a distressing day for them. And of course, I add that we were there for women who'd had abortions as well. So sometimes a woman would come out and immediately be feeling upset or distressed about what had happened. And we would talk to her about, you know, maybe getting some help or some healing for what she'd been through.
And going on to the complaints, I mean, the obvious source of complaint is the abortion clinic itself, you're bad for business, distressing customers, etc. And then you said the locals, and I just want to maybe deal with both parts of that. I mean, who are the locals? Just people with a home literally opposite the abortion clinic, or what?
So the abortion centre from the outside almost looks just like another house in the street. It's, you know, just a part of a neighbourhood, you know, a street full of houses. So when we first went there, I have to say there was quite a few people who would come out and thank us, people who came out saying, can I bring you a cup of tea? You know, if you ever want to use the bathroom while you're here, come into my house. You know, there was a lot of people who were very, very welcoming. But there were some in the area who were very much opposed to what we did. And people started saying to us, some of the locals started saying to us things like, I don't dare lift my head above the parapet because I'm worried about what my neighbours will think. And sorry, I don't think I can really say anything because of my neighbours and their opinions on this. And there was quite a campaign against us by some of the locals. You know, they'd be putting letters through people's letterboxes about us. I know because some of the other locals would come and say, just so you know, this is what's being said about you, you know, in our neighbourhood. And it was that they started a WhatsApp group, you know, talking about us. Again, some of the locals would share with us things that were being shared in this WhatsApp group.
But,
and sorry.
Yeah, so you're saying it was very, very ideological opposition. I mean, could you say you were disturbing their quiet enjoyment of their home in any way? I mean, there they are having a cup of tea, and there's your group outside with another. Would you say there was any environmental impact on their lifestyle, or do you think it was purely ideological?
So I remember on one occasion, before we started feeling maybe that the police had taken sides on this issue, should I say, that even a police officer stopped and said to me, one of the locals has complained that you're disturbing the peace, and that they can hear you inside their house when you're praying. And he said, this is just absolutely ridiculous, the thought that they could possibly hear you inside their houses. Obviously, when we're praying, the prayer would be just loud enough for the person who was next to us, our prayer partner, to be able to hear, so that we could, you know, pray together. Even if you were standing at the other side of the street, you wouldn't have been able to hear what we were saying. I mean, even people passing past probably wouldn't really particularly be aware of it, let alone anyone inside their house. So audibly, it certainly wouldn't be bothering anybody. And essentially, it was two people standing there. We didn't have any posters, even before the PSPO. We wouldn't have posters outside the abortion centre. And you know, I know some groups might do that, but we hadn't. So for people walking past, you know, it could just be just two people, you know, chatting on a street corner, and they would just be holding some leaflets. So I don't think there was in any way was it disturbing the neighbourhood. And obviously we are reasonable people. We're very much aware that we're in a neighbourhood, and we wouldn't want to be doing anything that disturbed someone's daily life. There was a time when we first went there near the early times when we were there, that the police actually asked if we would come to a meeting with some of the locals, some of the staff from the abortion centre, some of the local councillors, to talk about our presence there. And obviously we very much welcomed that and said, yes, we'd be really happy to come to the police station and talk about any concerns, if there's anything that could be done to help any relationship either way. We turned up at the police station and we were the only ones. None of the locals had come, none of the staff had come, none of the council members had come. So we did try to have communications with anyone if there was any genuine concerns, to see what they were and how that could be helped in any way. But it was a struggle to communicate with those who opposed us. We were regularly screamed at, sworn at, spat at, had our property stolen, physically assaulted. It was aggressive.
By the locals. By the
locals, yeah. We even had to take police action. Well, we certainly tried to take police action a few times. There was one time it was actually caught on camera, some of the violence. And after a real struggle with the police, we managed to get them to pursue it. And they had to do, the particular local in that case had to do what's called restorative justice. So they had to write a letter of apology to us, although it didn't stop this person coming back again and being abusive again. But it's been quite relentless. And I should say that even now that the volunteers have moved outside the buffer zone and are right down the end of the street, barely even in sight of the abortion centre and just outside the Catholic Church, they're still experiencing this abuse from certain locals in the streets. I
mean, this is sort of quite interesting. So, I mean, these people are assaulting you, and the police are dragging their feet on it, to put it mildly, but they've probably got quite an eagle eye on you. If you had done the slightest breach of law, that might have given them a good excuse. Well, beyond prey, perhaps if you'd obstructed, or did you feel the police would you've already mentioned they appeared to take sides. I mean, did you feel it was like that? One side had latitude and you were under the eagle eye?
100%, yes. And that's really concerned me. It actually makes me feel quite vulnerable. And I would say I'm a fairly strong-minded person. And I know a lot of my volunteers who've said similar, that, we've had occasions to dial 999, the police just won't come out. And yet, I've gone outside the abortion centre within, a few minutes, the police are there. And, even we've tried just describing on the phone situations to the police where we've had, I don't know, maybe a young woman praying, or, two young women praying, cars driving down the street at high speed towards them and then veering off just at the last second. One of our volunteers was surrounded by 7 locals, was physically assaulted, sworn at. Some of this captured on camera. And it's a real struggle to get the police to do anything about these situations. And it happens numerous times. We've had our property stolen many times. And a lot of the volunteers are saying now, look, why should I bother telling the police? Why should I bother reporting it? They're just not interested. And we're made to feel like we're the nuisance in this. I certainly feel that for myself, that I'm considered to be a public nuisance in the area by some of the locals and by the police.
Yeah. I mean,
and yet, if we were to do anything of what they were doing to us, not that we would ever want to or ever even dream of doing that, but if we behaved like that for 10 minutes, the police would be there. And I've no doubt that we would be arrested, and probably quite rightly so, because some of the behaviour has been atrocious.
And just to tell you my last sort of comment question, that if they could have got you for a criminal act, do you think they might not have gone for the PSPO? What I mean by that is, well, you were there every week, you were law abiding. The police people were looking for something, but they couldn't find anything. So the only solution was the PSPO. How does that sort of?
Well, I think there's something in that, because as we know, there's already laws to prevent harassment and intimidation of people, if they had been able to get us on doing any of that, I have no doubt that they would, and I hope they would if we had done anything that was harassing or intimidating people. I don't believe in that. But I think it is because, as I say, that the locals were constantly kicking up a fuss, or at least some of the locals. As I say, there's some who've been very supportive. Some of the locals who very much were just constantly complaining about us. And I think it was maybe a way of trying to appease those locals. And as I say, maybe the ideology of some of the police or council members themselves.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Are there any other questions that commissioners have about this first period of arrest before we proceed? Can I just ask a few questions of clarification? And this follows the discussion between Paul and yourself, Izzy. You've spoken about a number of experiences that you and your colleagues had outside the clinic. Are we talking about the same clinic, the Robert Clinic in Birmingham?
That's
all those
right,
experiences
yes.
that you've...
Yes, yeah. So I have to say, when we've come to the end of the term at the previous abortion centre, we actually had a good relationship with many of the staff there. They actually welcomed me inside the abortion centre when they were closing down. Some of them were giving me hugs. We had a good relationship with many of the people there. The manageress came out with a bag of donuts to announce they were closing, to talk to us. So they certainly, at least many of the staff there, wouldn't have viewed us in a negative way, and many of the passers-by there were much more supportive.
Can you just explain when you say they were closing? So was there what do you mean exactly? Were they
This is the previous
then...
abortion centre when it closed down. It was a Mary Stopes facility, and it closed down at the end of 2019. And the manageress came out to announce it with a bag of donuts to hand to our volunteers. And as I say, we went inside the abortion centre, had a good conversation with the staff there.
But it's on that site. Are we saying on that site is where the BPAS Robert Clinic?
No, sorry. Where the previous site, we had our 40 days for life outside.
Oh, the previous site.
Place in Birmingham. Sorry, I'm probably confusing matters.
Right. So just to clarify again, so all those experiences that you spoke about, are we talking about those happening at both? You know, when you said you and your colleagues have been spat at, and there were issues with the locals. Those experiences happened at both sites. Is that the understanding?
So at the previous, I probably shouldn't have brought it into it. Where we used to previously hold our 40 days for life, which is a different area in Birmingham. Certainly, for the last so many years that we were there, we had a good relationship with both a lot of staff and with generally with a lot of locals as well. When we moved to this new abortion centre, it was quite a different story. And we've been assaulted, etc., both inside and outside of the PSPO zone. Right.
And these negative experiences, what window of time approximately are we talking in terms of months or years?
So we moved there in 2020, and we've had those experiences since we moved there.
Do you know which?
Growing increasingly worse. Well, as I say, to start with, there was maybe a few that were quite aggressive, but it seems like they have encouraged others, and we found the aggression to be, continuous, really.
But do you know when in 2020 when you had a presence there from? Which month?
Initially, it would have the first 40 Days for Life campaign starts in Lent, so it would have been whenever Lent started in the year of 2020. So it would have been on the Ash Wednesday of that year.
Right. So the Robert Clinic in Birmingham. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have any further questions for that first section. We would like to see to the second category of events. And I'd like to invite Simon to take over, please, with some questions.
Morning, Izzy. So with the second arrest, that was in March 2023. What date was that exactly?
I think again, I think it might be the 6th of March, but I'm sorry, my dates won't be that exact for you. It was approximately 2 weeks after I'd just been acquitted in the court. I know that.
that would have been 3 weeks, wouldn't it?
It was between 2 to 3 weeks after.
Right.
After it happened. Yeah, I don't think it was after 3 weeks.
And it was the same. And the second arrest was at the same clinic. Was it the same spot? Same spot,
exactly
same site?
Same spot. Yeah.
Okay, so many of these questions are going to be the same as the last, but we'll just have to go through them. So was it a complaint that preceded the arrival of the police? Was this a member of the public again at the time when the clinic was closed?
So the second arrest happened when the clinic was open.
Right.
And as far as I'm aware, it would have been one of the locals again, because the locals pretty much notice as soon as I go there, someone will be looking out of their windows. But
that's speculative. You don't know exactly who made the complaint.
Either of the times I couldn't tell you who exactly
Okay.
contacted the police, but I just know at the station I would have been told that you know, like I say, particularly with that first time, I was read out various complaints that people had given me or given against me.
Okay, and what did the police say about the nature of the complaints when they arrived?
Neither time when the police arrived did they tell me about the complaints.
Okay, so can you tell us exactly what happened then? Can you give us a picture of where you were in relation to the building? When you would say exactly the same spot.
Exactly.
So we don't really need to cover everything.
Yeah, there's like 3 little manhole covers that we've always stood on to make sure I stand pretty much the same spot as each time I go.
Okay, so you always go in pray in the same place.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that's on the other side of the street from the abortion facility.
It's on the same side as the abortion centre.
Right. Oh, same side. Okay.
A few metres down from their gate.
Right. Okay. So, so how long were you praying before the police turned up?
A reasonable amount of time, as in not just a few minutes.
Yeah. And was there much traffic coming and going from the abortion centre at the time?
The abortion centre itself. To be honest, as far as I'm aware, not particularly. But to be honest, I would have just been kind of, I don't want to make myself sound too pious, just immersed in prayer. I wasn't trying to to engage with anyone going into the abortion centre. Okay. So I wouldn't have been aware, especially as some people might just go straight in from another direction, or people walking past, I wouldn't have known whether they went in or not. I just wouldn't have been aware of who was or wasn't using the abortion centre that day. So
you were so quiet and unobtrusive that many people may have walked past you without even noticing you. Is that what you're saying?
I would say if someone was using the abortion centre, they would have had no idea what I was there for, unless someone told me.
Okay, so no threat whatsoever. No harassment or intimidation.
No interaction with anyone going in, and no one going in tried to interact with me.
Okay. So you say in your case summary, you said that 6 police officers arrived on the scene. I mean, is that correct? Could you tell me exactly how they turned up? Did they turn up in a police van? And
so there was some of them came walking around the corner to start with, I think. So I'm not sure where they parked a police car. But there ended up being a police van that came right next to me, which was the one which took me away eventually. I presume there must have been other police cars parked a little bit further away around corners, because other police officers came walking down the road who hadn't been in that police van. But at one point I saw at least 6 police officers standing in the street. Obviously I was focused on the police officer, or the 2 who were right next to me, but out of the periphery of my vision I saw at least another 4 police officers in the street.
So the 2 right opposite you, they were both male, is that right? And were WPCs with them as well?
The 2 next to me were both males, yeah.
Right, okay. And they're the ones who spoke to you. Okay. So what did they say to you?
Those police officers told me that they asked obviously what I was doing, and I said that I was silently praying, and they told me that my prayers were an offence. I told them that it was just silent prayer, and they said it doesn't matter, that's still an offence. And they said something to the effect of it was people's perceptions of what I was doing that mattered. And I said, no, I believe there has to be some, because they said something about intimidation, and I said that I wasn't intimidating anyone, I was just merely standing here praying. And they said, but it's people's perceptions of what you're doing. I said, no, I believe there has to be some sort of measurable level of intimidation or harassment for anything illegal to be happening. And they said, no, it's just people's perception.
So when they were grilling you, were they asking you what was going on in your head? Were they asking you to declare your thoughts, what you were praying for?
I don't believe they actually asked me what I was praying for when I was outside the abortion centre. No.
Right, okay. But they arrested you, so what did they tell you that they were arresting you for?
I believe they just told me they were arresting me for breaching the PSPO. But they'd have been asking me about my prayers prior to that. Obviously, like I said, I told them that I was just silently praying.
And how long did this questioning go on for in the street?
Not that long. It was fairly brief. Again, there's been a video of that, and you can see it's quite a fairly brief. There's a lot of sort of waiting in silence while they seem to go off and talk and things like that. But it didn't. The actual interaction with me.
And did they subject you to another thorough search, as you say?
They didn't search me at all that time. No.
Okay. So they escorted you to the van and they took you to the police station. Was it the same police station?
It was the same police station, yeah.
Right,
not
okay.
The one.
Okay, so other than so what did they say about abortion when they were questioning you outside this clinic? What did they ask you specifically about abortion?
I don't particularly remember anything particularly about abortion.
Okay. So it's really about just you being there when they said you shouldn't have been there.
Well, they seemed particularly focused on the prayers. As I said, he said your prayer is an offence. Right. I said the silent prayers, and he said it doesn't matter, it's still an offence. Okay,
so and did they say it was an offence against the public space protection order or anything else?
Well, that was what they arrested me for breaching. Right. But his words were something like your prayers are an offence.
Okay. So what were you charged with in the end?
I wasn't charged.
You wasn't charged?
I was put on bail for 3 months.
Right, okay. Sorry, you did say earlier, I remember.
Yeah, and so for 6 months, I wasn't, even after the bail, they told me, towards the end of my bail, the police told me that they'd handed the case over to the Crown Prosecution Service and that I would hear from the Crown Prosecution Service. So I waited, I heard nothing from the Crown Prosecution Service. I went back to the police and said, look, I've heard nothing from the CPS, and I want to know what's going on. They said, you need to talk to the CPS. It's not up to, we're not the ones who are dealing with it now. In the end, I contacted the CPS myself, and they said that the case had never been sent to them.
Right, okay.
So we've got no
but at the same time, they imposed very, very stringent sets of bail conditions. Which, I mean, first of all, could you run us through what the bail conditions were, to the best of your knowledge, your memory, and also tell me exactly what your feelings are for the imposition of these bail conditions when the police had no intention of taking the case to court? I mean, why were they doing that?
Well, again, I just feel like the fact that anyone is put on bail at all, it makes you feel like you're a criminal. Obviously, before any of this happened, I'd never had any run-ins with the police. I've never even had so much as points on my license. So to suddenly be made to feel like I'm doing something which is criminal, it does make you feel quite vulnerable, for want of a better word. It's like I say, particularly when it's people who you think are going to be upholding your freedoms and helping to protect you, and they're the ones who are behaving like this.
So what were you ordered to do and not to do?
One of the bail's conditions was I wasn't allowed inside the PSPO at all, but I wasn't allowed in an area larger than the PSPO as well. There were certain parts of streets that I just wasn't allowed in, and that would have included part of the area where my volunteers would pray outside the buffer zone. So I wasn't allowed to join them there.
So are there any more restrictions on your freedom of association, who you could talk to and who you couldn't talk to?
They didn't, no, at that time they didn't say there wasn't anyone I couldn't talk to.
Okay, so in September of this year, you said the police contacted you with an apology. I mean, the apology was, I've seen the apology, and it's quite a strange apology because they're not really apologising for putting you through this terrible ordeal without any substance or foundation. It's the apology for taking so long to apologise. Or to tell you that apology for taking so long to tell you that there isn't a case. So they made you wait for 6 months before they told you that there was no case.
And even then, that's only because, as far as I'm, and I'm not a legal person myself, but I think that was the maximum time that they had, 6 months. So I think they had to tell me something at the end of 6 months.
Could you tell the Commission in your own words exactly what happened with regards to this apology? It
was an email telling me that charges, because 6 months had expired, charges would not be continued, and the case was essentially being dropped. No charges were being continued. Sorry, this has taken so long. It was something to that effect.
So, how did you feel about being told that once again you've been exonerated?
I can't say. I mean, it was obviously it was good that at last I'd heard that, you know, after the 6 months there was some kind of conclusion to it. But I really felt I deserved more than that after all that time. I felt, you know, I've had to try and make the most of the fact that my name's become quite public with it, but at the same time, it's not a nice thing to be, like I say, to be made to almost feel like a criminal because of this. And I just felt that the way the police had behaved just hadn't been impartial at all. And I felt I deserved certainly a proper apology, not just like a sorry it's taken so long to tell you this.
Have you asked them for a proper apology?
I haven't, no.
Okay, just going back to the time
when apology asked for isn't much of an apology.
Just it'd be nice to know that they would actually admit that that they behaved disproportionately. Just going back to the day when you were arrested, and just to repeat the same sort of sequence of questions. What long were you held in the station, and what happened while you were there?
So after the second arrest, I wasn't questioned. So I was taken to the police station. I was in a cell for a while. And after
how long's a while?
Well, this time I was in the cell, but I wasn't locked in the cell. There was a police officer standing in the doorway, so I didn't have to actually hand over any belongings or go through that situation again. And they told me there was some problem with, I think it was the computers going down or something of that nature. So they were saying this is why there was a delay. And so I was there for, I don't know, maybe an hour, but I'm very much
okay. And they didn't search you again? Didn't search this time?
They didn't search me, and they didn't question me when I was there.
Right. Okay. So they just took you in for a while and let you go, basically, with a set of bail conditions. Is that about right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then you had to catch a taxi back to your car, or was it what happened this time?
I had to sort myself out getting back.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so how did you feel about being arrested 3 weeks after you've been cleared by a circuit judge at Birmingham Magistrates Court?
Again, I just felt it was surreal, just crazy that it's so soon after it's happened that they should come out in such a forceful manner as well. Even being verbally, they seemed more forceful and aggressive than they had the first time. This police officer, he was, you know, quite a big police officer, kind of looming over me, saying your prayers are an offence.
Yeah.
It was quite shocking, really, that they would behave in that manner. You think that they would at least have mentioned the situation that had just happened, that had been to court, and explained why they were behaving in this way, considering that I'd just been to court and been acquitted. If they thought there was something different that had happened, I would have thought that they would have brought that up and explained something to me. But as I say, they just seemed quite aggressive.
Did you get a sense that the police were being motivated by an ideology of some sort? I mean, they're not policing without fear or favour, are they? Here, they seem to be quite partisan. I mean, has any police officer ever said anything to you that's conveyed the impression that they are being motivated by an underlying ideology?
I do, yeah. I mean, as I say, right from the start, the way that we've been treated differently to locals and how that's played out. I mean, I remember at one time when one of my volunteers had been physically assaulted, and I was trying to get the police to pursue it. And I remember phoning up one of the police officers who was supposed to be my point of contact and saying, you know, look, it's getting to the stage that some of my male volunteers are frightened to come out because of being assaulted. You know, what is being done about this last incident? And he said back to me, well, if you don't want to be assaulted, you don't have to come out of your house, do you?
Right.
And I was just absolutely shocked that a police officer should say that. And I remember taking that up with his, going higher up and then higher up again to complain about what had been said. And I was told, you must have taken that out of context. And I said, well, in what context is that acceptable to say to somebody? If you don't want to be assaulted, don't come out of your house. But he himself was saying, oh, I didn't mean it like that. I said, how else could you mean that, you know? And again, one of our male volunteers who was physically assaulted, the one who actually had restorative justice done in the end, he was on the phone to the police, and he actually said to them something like, I feel like you're monitoring our every move, and I'm very much paraphrasing, but something to the effect of, you're monitoring our every move, but you don't seem to be bothered about how people are treating us. Why are you there, you know, so quick to monitor us if you're not doing the same to the others? And the police officer said, well, you might have been infiltrated by the BNP, mightn't you? Which again, I just thought that there's absolutely no evidence for something which is incredible.
So they seem to think that you're the far right or right-wing extremists. Is that what you're saying?
Well, certainly that officer did. And as I say, when I've gone higher up to report these things, it's not like someone's come back saying, you know, of course that shouldn't have been said. You know, there seems to be support for those officers.
How far would you go to say that there are failings in the conduct of the police in to properly protect members of the public, irrespective of peaceful, law-abiding members of the public, and B, abusing the power? I mean, there's two.
Say that both of those statements are correct.
Right.
Yeah. And I know in the past, I might have thought, yes, you know, in any organisation, you're going to have the odd person who maybe doesn't behave as they should or brings their beliefs into their work and things like that. That's humanity. But I feel that I'm experiencing so much by every police officer, pretty much, that I've encountered, with one exception I can actually think of. But other than that, it seems to be, like I say, just really prevalent.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the second arrest before we move on?
No.
Okay. Would you like me to proceed to the fixed penalty notice questions, Robert, or would that be matter for you?
I have a few questions, if I may. You said that you, in the second arrest, you got locked in your cell for approximately 1 hour. Is that
I wasn't locked in it. I was in the cell, but there was a police officer standing in the doorway, so I wasn't locked in the cell.
So how about the first arrest? Did they lock you in the cell?
First arrest, I was locked in the cell for a few hours. Yeah, probably.
When you say a few hours,
probably a couple of hours at least, I would have thought, altogether.
Right. And forgive me if I missed this, but when you got arrested the second time, did you mention that you had been arrested previously and what happened and you got exonerated, etc. at the court?
No, it was a very brief conversation.
Right. And were any of the officers who visited you at the clinic on the second arrest, were any of those officers the same as those when you got arrested on the first?
Certainly not the arresting officers. As I say, there was another 4 that I saw in the street, but I wouldn't particularly have connected with who they were. But certainly the 2 that were involved primarily in my arrest, they weren't.
And can you just clarify, this is again with regards to the second arrest, how many officers actually questioned you at the station?
There was 2 officers at the station who questioned me, a male and a female, mainly the male, but the female did a little bit of questioning.
And outside the clinic, I think you said there was very little questioning.
On all of the occasions, yeah. Well, but both of those occasions of the arrests, it was quite brief outside the abortion centre.
Sorry, so are there any other questions from commissioners about the second arrest? Nobody? Paul, Simon, Gabriel?
No, I'm happy.
No. Okay, I'd like to invite Paul, please, to ask some questions about the third event, if I may.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Isabel. I think this is maybe shorter than the others because I think we've covered a lot of the ground. Um, just a way, I've got some breakup in my communications. Is it? Am I coming over clear?
You are to me, yes.
Okay. Um, so you, in September, you get the apology. After 6 months, they're going to take no further action. It sounds a rather vague question, this, but they don't seem very keen to get you into court, do they? They seem rather keen to harry you, threaten you with legal action, leave you in bail condition with suspense, but they don't seem to want to bring this for a full trial before. Would you, is there any sort of feeling of that? Any views on that?
Yeah, I would say I agree. Yeah, it seems to be the process is the punishment, and I think they'd rather that. I almost feel it's
because that's actually quite a good legal tactic, and you don't actually ever have a full hearing. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, yeah. I think that certainly seems to be how I've experienced it.
And of course, if you get it into court, you can actually challenge, can't you? This PSPO.
Yeah, and in a way, part of me would almost, rather do that and have it over with. Like with that first time, I kind of think at least I would rather, go to court and be acquitted there and have it out like that, or else just leave me alone. But no, I think they want I think they feel it's maybe a good sign to other people, like this is what will happen to you if you do it, and that's what will put other people off, because obviously the average person won't want to go through all this.
No. So let's go back to this fixed penalty notice. Was that exactly the same abortion clinic, same procedure, silently praying?
Yes.
And was the abortion clinic closed that day as well?
No, it was open.
Right, but you were alone that day?
Yes. And
so you must be closely monitored by now. Presumably, when you turned up that day, it was a street. I mean, was there a police officer already?
Oh no. But like I say, the locals, I think, will. They've got an eye out straight away if they see what's going on very quickly.
And so you stand there. How long do you think you were there before a police officer arrived?
Maybe an hour.
Right. But it's not very. How long would you be out there if you'd had the day free?
Normally I pray for 2 hours at a time.
Right.
Or ish.
And so the police officer comes out. What happens this time? How many came out? How many officers?
It was two females that came.
Right.
And asked if I would move, and I said I had no need to. It was very much they had questions written out this time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it helps to say, and feel free to stop me if this isn't helpful. So I had been going every week for quite a few weeks, pretty much. So obviously my bail had been dropped after 3 months. So after then I felt it was, I could go back and silently pray. So I did anyway. So I had been silently praying for quite a few weeks. And previous to that, 2 male volunteers had encountered this, somebody telling them, a police officer telling them they were going to have a fixed penalty notice. And I think it was the following week that I went, and I had the same questions that they had had.
Yeah.
So I felt that these were fixed questions that had been given by someone higher up, presumably at the police centre.
Right.
And like I say, they were asking me, you know, was I part of a pro-life organisation?
Was you part of what organisation?
Was I part of a pro-life organisation?
Okay.
And was I praying for unborn children? And they asked me if I knew there was a PSPO, if I would move further away outside the PSPO zone, why I wouldn't move further away, and ultimately asked me for my details and said if I didn't move further away, I would be given a fixed penalty notice. And then they took my details and handed me a ticket, which, as I say, turned out not to be actually a fixed penalty notice.
And they didn't offer to. They didn't say they were going to arrest you on this occasion. Was that implied at all? If you said I'm not going.
No, they just said I would be given a fixed penalty notice.
Right. And what was the impact of that fixed penalty notice on you? Did you sort of say to yourself, well, I better not pray anymore, wait until they make a decision on this or have a court date on this? Or did you continue to pray regularly despite the fixed penalty?
I believe I've got every right to silently say my prayers. So I would continue to do that. If they do want to go to court, then if necessary, I'll do that, because I believe I am entitled to express, well.
This might not be a comment for a commissioner, but I do think you're very amazing. I mean, most of my experiences of people are very intimidated by the police. They're very intimidated by threats of appearing before a magistrate's court or what will be the consequences. And I have to say, I notice you're sort of, I admire it. Just keep going until there's a judicial decision on this.
Well, I believe if people are behaving like bullies, what you don't do is give in to a bully. And I do believe that's how the police are behaving at the moment. I really feel that we're being bullied by them. And I find that very unpleasant. And I don't think I should, as I say, that the way you treat a bully is, and to be honest, some of the people in the street as well are behaving very much like the playground bully. And that if I did this again, I would receive a fixed penalty notice.
And you're still of the same mind until there's a judicial decision on this. This is that
I've been carrying on going every week since then.
Yeah. Okay, just check. Okay. Just finally, if I could just of all the questions the police asked you, they appear to have focused as closely as they could on the actual nature of the offence of praying or disapproval in a public space order. Did you feel at any time they wanted to sort of question your Christian beliefs per se, or ridicule your Christian beliefs per se?
I think the fact that they were that their focus was on my prayer, and that was how they were claiming I'd broken the PSPO, i.e. until that was mentioned, there was no arrest, or it was because I'd been praying that they seemed to suddenly focus on arresting me. And like I say, the second time I was even told, your prayers are an offence. I think that is an attack on my Christian beliefs. My prayers are my thoughts turned towards God, and I very much felt that was the police being concerned about my prayers.
And I mean, and did you feel? I'm just trying to see because and did you feel there was any disrespect about the prayer and the sort of sneering or anything like that, or did you feel?
I think on the second arrest, for the police officer to be saying to me, "Your prayers are an offence. They are an offence," in such an emphatic way, I think that is quite disrespectful towards somebody's beliefs, and I know it's the sort of thing that you hear a lot of people saying nowadays, but I really do. Whether there would have been the same thing, I don't know. Maybe there would have, but I do feel that that was quite a disrespectful thing to be saying to somebody about their silent prayers, like they are an offence.
Yeah.
And as emphatically as he said it.
And just slightly off spec, did you think some officers, male or female, were embarrassed by arresting you and interfering with your silent prayer? You know,
I can't say that. I mean, I think possibly some of them might have felt nervous. I don't know, but I don't know whether embarrassed. I think you know, maybe, obviously they were aware they were being filmed. I always try and make sure I film it so I've got a record. I don't know if that's possible. I mean, you know, obviously when officers were behaving, like I say, with that second time in such a kind of bullish manner, I don't know if that's, I'm getting too much into psychology here. I don't know whether that's because somebody feels a bit nervous that they sort of like overcompensate by being quite aggressive. I've got no idea. But nothing particularly made me think anyone was embarrassed to do that.
No, but they've certainly made a spectacle of you, haven't they? I mean, the first street arrest, in which you were sort of items taken off you publicly in the street, in effect. And clearly
they didn't seem embarrassed to be doing that at all, certainly with the first arrest.
Yeah, but it clearly wasn't procedure, because it wasn't necessarily in the second arrest, was it?
Oh, that certainly was what came to my mind. I had, you know, and I was never told that anyone had you know, given any kind of statements or allegations, like I say, that I'd threatened anyone or that I'd hidden an item on me that I shouldn't have. I wasn't told anything like that anyone had ever said about me. So I can't see any reason why I would need to be searched unless that is standard procedure. And if it is, why wasn't it done again?
And just perhaps, again, slightly off spec, I'm wondering what would be a satisfactory conclusion for you. Let's say you never get to court. We've got to sort of dance around a pole where you're threatened, there's going to be a notice, whatever. You never actually get for a hearing before a judge. What is clearly this police harassment is what would you regard as a successful conclusion? An apology? Police officers protecting your rights?
Well, I am looking at the moment at legal action against the police, and obviously I'm working with ADF to see whether that's something to be pursued or not. So I will be advised by people who know more about that to see whether that's something to be pursued. But I certainly do feel that I need some kind of compensation in some way for the way they're treated. But as I say, not just for me. I just want that situation to change. I want them to behave professionally, whether it's on this issue or any other issue. They shouldn't be taking sides. If any of my volunteers behaved in a harassing or intimidating manner, I would want them to deal with it. I would expect them to deal with it. And I expect them to do that if we're being harassed or intimidated or you know, having our property stolen, etc. I want to be able to feel that the police are respecting that.
Well, that's no further questions. I'm sure some other commissioners will have some questions.
I mean, just as a point of order, how much time do we have, Robert? Because
we plan to finish at the latest at 12:30, so I think we're well within time at the moment. Okay. Thank you, Paul. I have a few questions, if I may, in the light of the discussion. The fixed penalty notice, how much was it for exactly?
So as I say, I was told if you don't move today, you'll be given a fixed penalty notice. They took my details and wrote out a ticket, but the ticket they gave me just essentially didn't have any, you know, monetary.
It didn't say no.
No, it just had like the name of the officer and that kind of thing on it. And as I say, the email I had through the letter that I then had said, next time you'll be given a fixed penalty. So they led me to believe that what they were handing me was a fixed penalty notice, but it was just essentially a ticket.
And if I heard you correctly, I think you said at one point that normally you would pray for a period of 2 hours. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, I just generally as a vague rule, but that's certainly not anything kind of set in stone.
So is it possible just to go back a few steps? When you got arrested the first time, by the time the police had arrived, how long approximately were you praying for? I don't think we asked you that. Can you recollect?
Maybe something similar, maybe about an hour, but I would have to go back. I mean, I've got exact times written down, but I wouldn't be sure off the top of my head.
And the second arrest, any recollection of that one?
Again, something similar, probably.
Sorry?
Generally, they seem to come after. It's probably something similar. I seem to have been
similar.
but I would have to go back and double check before that was put down as anything set in stone.
Right. And you also said in passing about I'm not sure if it was the first or the second event when a solicitor visited you at the police station. I got that
Yes.
right? Was that
yes,
on
I
both
asked
occasions?
the duty solicitor to be present when I was being questioned.
Was that for the first event and the second event?
Second event, I wasn't questioned. The
Right,
second arrest.
No, that's right. But the solicitor, the visit from the duty solicitor, was that just for the first event?
Yes, because the only reason the solicitor came was to be present while I was being questioned.
And did this duty solicitor, I mean, what was the interaction between yourself and the duty solicitor on that first occasion?
In a way, quite interesting, because as I say, this is obviously somebody randomly chosen by the police. I went into a private room with him, obviously, to have a conversation before we were being questioned, before I was being questioned. And he introduced himself and said, just to let you know, I'm an atheist. And I did wonder why he'd said this, and thought, is this somebody who's going to, not support my position or anything like that? But he'd been handed a sort of dossier of information from the police, which was supposed to be this evidence that they had against me, which was like loads of photographs that different people in the street had taken, photographs of myself, photographs of Father Sean. And he started looking through it, and he just said, this is ridiculous. And I said, oh, that was the same word I was thinking. And he said, no, it's not ridiculous. And then he said another word, and then ridiculous. Not an aggressive swear word, but a milder swear word. And I realised that he was just purely from a point of law, he could see how ridiculous this was. Which was, in a way, made it quite nice that he didn't have any religious, and I presume not any maybe particular pro-life beliefs himself. He certainly didn't disclose anything, but he could just see how farcical the whole situation was. And I won't go maybe too much into details of what he said, but I could see he thought this. He just kept looking at these different photographs that were supposed to be evidence that were just photographs of me standing in the street. And I just remember he just kept shaking his head as he looked at them, like, as in, this is just crazy.
Right. Okay, so you had that interaction with the solicitor, and as you say, there was no interaction, there was no visit from a duty solicitor on the second occasion.
No.
Okay. And can you just talk very broadly, say as much or as little as you want, whatever you feel comfortable with, during all of these events, from when they started until very recently, when they concluded, what personal support have you had in your life, if any? I mean, just say as little or as much as you feel comfortable with.
So obviously, from a legal perspective, I've been supported by ADF. They've been very, very helpful, and I've really appreciated the support that I've had from them. And I genuinely mean that. I wouldn't just say that because they've supported me. They've been really, really great. And I have been kind of overwhelmed by the amount of support I've just had from people that I don't even know. Some of those are people who've said that they don't support my religious beliefs, or they don't support my pro-life beliefs, but they support me in what I'm doing, and believe in my right, or anyone's right, to be able to silently pray wherever they choose. So that is really encouraging to hear that. Obviously, people my local 40 Days for Life group and things like that are very, very supportive towards me in this case. So yeah, I do feel that there have been, in fact, in a way, I've been surprised at how many people have messaged me messages of support, which is very, very encouraging. And as I say, a lot of them people I don't know, people are, you know, in other countries that I don't know at all. So it kind of shows that this has really been shared far and wide. And one of the nice things is that, in a way, I think it has helped highlight what has been going on outside abortion centres for quite a while. In as much as, I mean, just a while ago, I was giving a talk somewhere, and at the end, a lady came up to me and she said, I think it's disgusting that women should be harassed when they're going into abortion centres. Nobody should be intimidated like that. And I was just sort of thinking to myself, she was really kind of beginning to kind of rant, and I thought, she's just going to come and have a massive go, and I'm not going to get a chance to say anything. But she gradually sort of slowed down, and she went, but you know what? I've realised that I've been lied to. I've realised that this hasn't been happening all along, and that I've just been sold a load of lies. And I just want to say I really do appreciate what you're doing and what other groups do. And I think that has been the case for some people, because for a long time we've had a lot of mud thrown at us, you know, generally in media. You know, I know our local newspapers, whenever this is being reported, obviously we don't get a chance to respond to it. And, you know, mud sticks, and it's usually that, you know, we're shouting murderer and screaming at people running down the road after them, and just ridiculous things that I would, you know, totally distance myself from if anyone behaves in any such manner. And people end up believing it. So it is helpful that it's maybe made a few people realise that this isn't what was happening at all. It's just people praying, and obviously prior to the buffer zones offering help and support to women. So in a way, it has maybe opened some people's eyes to the reality of what's been going on all along.
Yes, and I have one other question, if I may. Can you just tell us, because your case has been publicised in many places around the world, in your own words, can you just tell us what experiences you had about being interviewed and having contact with media? Can you just tell us about that?
I guess that is like maybe just sort of alluding to just there, that is a good part of what has happened. It has enabled me to talk about this issue with groups of people that I maybe wouldn't have otherwise had the chance to talk about. Particularly quite a lot of younger people, as in student ages, have really kind of engaged with this issue. I know with our own 40 Days for Life group, we've had, you know, new people saying they realised it's time to get off the fence. That, you know, they want to come and do something about their pro-life beliefs too. So it is quite encouraging seeing how well it's been received, and that I think maybe more people are kind of wising up to the bias in how these kind of things are reported, certainly by mainstream media. So yeah, I guess that has been good also for just creating awareness of the issue, which is something clearly that I believe in. Not just this particular issue, as in, you know, what's been happening in Birmingham or with our police or anything like that, but the wider issue of abortion. You know, how damaging this can be, particularly to women, and enabled me to have opportunities to talk to people about that, which is actually the side of this that I am grateful for. Yeah, but as I say, also I can see it's had the effect it's had on our neighbourhood of where we are outside the church in Birmingham. The division there is still really, really strong.
Thank you. Gabriel, I understand you wanted to ask some questions. Are you with us? He'll probably come back in a few moments.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Paul, Simon, do you have any further questions?
I've got just one comment question again. When you get these, I mean, there's been a couple, like the Ealing case. There's been a number of challenges to these orders in these cases, and the Ealing buffer zone, and they're introducing buffer zones all around the country. You get this sort of very eloquent. This is the most delicate moment for women. This is the biggest decision in their life. It's a pregnancy. We don't know their background and they're suffering so much. And then they come to an abortion clinic and there are these Christian groups, some more aggressive than you perhaps, and they're terrifying these girls at these very vulnerable moments in their life. You get this kind of, the court said this is why we can't have free speech on this, because it's such a sensitive issue. We have to limit free speech. I mean, what do you feel about these very emotive arguments used for women in a sort of, you know, in a very sort of almost sectarian manner? This is something that women have a special right to abortion and you can't upset them. What do you feel about this?
Well, as I think has been said earlier today, I mean, there already are laws about harassment and intimidation, and how we treat other people. And I've yet to see any member of a pro-life organisation outside an abortion centre being prosecuted under these. And considering how many groups do pray outside abortion centres, how many individuals do, I think that's a pretty incredible track record that there's not, obviously any group can have a fringe member, as we were talking about in the part, whether that's the police or anyone else. And yet I don't know of a single case where anyone has behaved, harassed anyone or intimidated, let alone assaulted anyone or anything like that. So we already got those laws to deal with those kind of situations. My experience of 20 years of talking to women going into abortion centres, or talking to couples as well, is that a lot of them haven't made up their minds. The ones that have often made up their minds based on very limited information, and that would mean that they often don't know what the alternatives are. But so many people are really so unsure. The amount of times I've heard from a woman going into an abortion centre, I've been praying for a sign. If someone's praying for a sign to show them whether they should keep their baby or not, or continue their pregnancy or not, however we want to view it, that says to me that person really isn't too sure about what they want to do. And so for there to be somebody offering those alternatives is hugely important. And that is not what abortion centres are about. Abortion centres don't provide accommodation for women, don't provide financial support for women, don't provide private medical care or child care or anything else that the pro-life organisations will help provide for women who need them. And so many of the women that we speak to have in some way been coerced or pressured into making the decisions they have, whether that's by a partner or family, or sometimes just by their situations very much making them feel pressured into making the decision that they're making. We know that the BBC did a poll not that long ago that showed the level of coercion there can be around this subject. So to not be able to have those people offering that kind of last-ditch help to women who might want it, because, like I say, like you're sort of intimating, somebody says that they don't, and it's often not the women themselves saying that. It's either the abortion providers or those who live in the local vicinity, or sometimes, abortion supporting groups. I hesitate not to use the word pro-choice because I don't think they do believe in real choice, but groups who would call themselves pro-choice groups, like Sister Supporter and things like that we saw in Ealing. Because people like that get involved in those areas outside abortion centres. But for the people using the abortion centres, we don't so often hear the voice of the women who have been supported, who have been helped. As I say, I know so many of them who are deeply grateful for the support and the help that they received. And many more women who said that they had an abortion but wish that there had been somebody there offering help to them on that day. So those people who were praying outside the abortion centre, many of the people in my organisation, in my own 40 Days for Life in Birmingham, are themselves post-abortive. Some of them have been through multiple abortions again and again and again. They're certainly not going to be judging women going into that abortion centre. they're there because they know what it can be like, how hard it can be. They know that some of the pressures, obviously we don't know what it's like for any individual person, but we know the sort of fears, the sort of difficulties that there can be in the lives of women or couples going into abortion centres. And of course, those that don't want to accept any help or have any interaction are still free to go into that abortion centre without having any interaction. One of the sad things that has come out of what has been happening, over the last few years, is that sometimes people going into abortion centres have believed what they've read about people like us outside abortion centres. They've heard these stories that we will run down the road or run up the paths after them, screaming at them, pelting them with fecal models and shouting murder or whatever. And no wonder by the time some of them come, they are nervous when they see somebody standing outside, because if they've believed half of what's been told, they think we're a bunch of, right-wing vigilantes that are there to judge them. And I can sympathise with some of them who might feel quite nervous because of how things have been reported, and because we rarely get a chance to actually share what really happens, because that is a lot of, mainstream papers or local newspapers that people will read. That is what is reported in them. And it's the women who will lose out, as I say, they don't get the real offers of help and support that they need to make a proper informed decision at such a, what is a very, very, very difficult time for them and for many men as well, who are often silent partners in this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Izzy, can you just clarify something? There's several pro-life organisations in the UK, and your presence outside the abortion clinics is linked to 40 Days for Life. In terms of the support that you and your colleagues offer women, what my question is in two forms. One is, what is the nature of the support, and how does that support differ from what is offered by other pro-life organisations within the UK?
So with our 40 Days for Life in Birmingham, we basically pledge to support the woman however she needs it, whatever help she needs, not whatever she wants. Obviously, if she wants a new BMW or something, we might all want that, but whatever she needs to be able to continue that pregnancy and beyond for as long as she needs it. So just some of the things I was saying, we've helped people who've maybe got into terrible situations of debt and are really struggling financially. It might be something to do with accommodation. Sometimes it's just like emotional support. People are just feeling very isolated, and want somebody to talk to, or just some sort of friendship, and to be put in touch with other people. Sometimes it's other children that they've already got, born children that they're struggling with, and they might want some help with them. Sometimes they want a second medical opinion if they've been told something that they're not expecting about this pregnancy, and maybe some private care around that area, and maybe another scan, whatever it might be. Like I say, just whatever support that they might need to continue that pregnancy, and that would continue after their pregnancy, however long they might need it for. Often that would be putting them in touch with other organisations as well. So for example, like the Good Counsel Network, they offer nationwide help to women in difficult situations. So we might connect with them over a woman or a couple. And it might be a local organisation that we know can help in a particular situation for a woman or a couple. Maybe if they're, I don't know, immigrants to the country, and they're looking at certain things to do with their legal situation here, maybe refugees or whatever. It might be a situation like that where we look at what help can be got for them. Maybe we pay for some legal support for them. It can very much vary to woman to couple. It's not us to tell them what they need. They tell us what their needs are, and we look at how we can provide for those needs in a way that works for them and can continue for however long they need it.
So when you say accommodation, so if they have accommodation needs and they're asking you, as you say, you're not telling them what they need, they are asking you for help. What sorts of help in terms of accommodation would you be giving? Would you just be giving them directions about how to find a roof above their head, or is it financial support in terms of the accommodation? What exactly does that support mean?
Yeah, either of what you've said, it could, like I say, well, we'll work with organisations like, for instance, Good Counsel Network, who might maybe give them some advice about if it's something simply just like, I don't know how I go about sorting X, Y, Z out. We would work with them to make sure they know, and maybe have somebody going along with them to appointments or to help sort this out. It might mean that they need support in paying rent, or just need somebody to pay the rent for them because they can't afford it. It will be working on a one-to-one with that woman or that couple to make sure that they have got their accommodation sorted in whatever
Because I'm
way
aware
works.
that Good Counsel Network, among other things, they can in some situations provide financial support for a woman, in support of her raising her child and accommodation needs. So with regards to someone wanting finance for their accommodation, would you simply direct them to Good Counsel Network in that case?
Not necessarily, but sometimes yes. So it depends. We've had both situations. We've had women who've just been really struggling, or couples that have got into debt, and we've managed to work out a plan with them, whereas we financially support them and help them until they can support themselves, and help them to get to that place where they can support themselves. There have been other situations where we've contacted Good Counsel Network, and they've helped support a woman or a couple. So it can vary depending on maybe where this person is, what particular needs that person has got.
So it's a case-by-case basis, in other words. Yes.
Very much so, yes.
And in terms of support for a mother when she has her child, the financial support, are there circumstances where 40 Days for Life could or might assist financially in that context?
So just to be sure, clear what I'm saying, when I'm talking about 40 Days for Life, I'm talking about 40 Days for Life in Birmingham. Obviously, each 40 Days for Life group will run slightly differently depending on who's running it. So I'm not speaking for 40 Days for Life as an international organisation, but in our own 40 Days for Life group in Birmingham, yes, sometimes we support women financially as they need it, but very much so have done.
Thank you. Gabriel, are you available? You have some questions for Izzy?
I don't have anything further.
Okay, thank you. What we would like to do is we can communicate offline, as they say, once we've had the hearing today. We would like, if possible, in due course, if you could give us the information on the exact dates of the events that we've discussed, because we've got the month and the year, but having the dates, that would be quite helpful, Izzy. And also, there were some emails between yourself and the police, I think one involving an apology and possibly some others. Would it be possible in due course that you can also direct that to us as part of the evidence bundle that we have relating to your experiences?
I can look at the apology one, just to say there's been copious amounts of emails over the last getting on for a year now. But that email I could look at finding for you, yeah.
And finally, in terms of evidence, I'd rather ask you directly than search for this myself on the internet. You said that there's some videos of yourself being arrested. Can you send to us, the Commission of Inquiry, one or more videos, or I don't know if it's of both arrests or whatever you've got, as that will help us in gathering all this evidence together alongside what you've actually shared with us today. You can direct
no
that
problem.
to us. And then anything else that we haven't considered that could constitute evidence, paper or visual, that you could direct to us, that would be extremely helpful. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground today, and thank you so much for your time, Izzy.